In 1967, the year I took up golf, Ray Floyd invited Jack Nicklaus to come in and play for the grand opening of this golf course that Ray Floyd's dad was 30% owner of. Nicklaus was like 27 years old, had won 7 majors and like 7 tournaments. And I remember walking in those doors following Nicklaus and Floyd. Raymond gave me 30 brand new Wilson Staff golf balls. And heck, 40 years later, my mother called me and said, Chip, LB Floyd's not doing well. You need to come pay your last respects. Well, I drove over to Cypress where his home is. He was coming out in a wheelchair and he looked up and he said, Chip, the greatest day of my life was when you and Raymond finished 1-2 in the U.S. Open. That was 1986 at Shinnecock. I remember feeling so good with him telling me that, and he passed very shortly thereafter. But going in that locker room, the smell from the time I was 10 years old, it was a life-changing experience. I said, that's what I want to do. And I never looked back.
Golf Smarter number 771. 4-time PGA winner Chip Beck, sharing stories of his life on the tour during the 80s and 90s.
This is Golf Smarter, sharing stories, tips, and insights from great golf minds to help you lower your score and raise your golf IQ. Here's your host, Fred Green.
Welcome to the Golf Smarter podcast, Chip.
I'm so glad to be with you, Fred. It's finally, I get to see you and speak with you. It's exciting.
It's not that exciting, I promise. I promise, but it is great. It's an honor to speak to you. It really is. I don't talk to PGA Tour players or former PGA Tour players very often. And I like talking to caddies more than players because they tell better stories, right?
That's probably true.
Yeah.
I think that's why they've hired a couple of caddies to do the NBC work on course commentary, on television.
Yeah, it's probably true. And excuse, there's noise going on behind me, and sometimes I'll be talking and it'll be going on. So I apologize for that. There's construction going on. Anyway, but I think PGA Tour players are cautious. They've been burned. They know what to say and what not to say. So that's why I like talking to caddies, because they don't care.
Well, the great thing about golfers, generally speaking, they all have to work really hard to get, to the top of the league and just even to get there. So it doesn't matter if you're Tiger Woods or Fred Couples that seem to make it easy. Everybody has to put a lot of time and energy into it. So and also you're an independent contractor, so you have to sell yourself. So generally the pros are very affable. They're easy to get along with. So that's what I find. And I've always had a lot of great friends because of that. We respect that, nobody gets there for free. You got to put the work in. So we're usually pretty good to talk with, Fred. So don't worry.
Well, okay, now you're really opening the door. So who on the PGA Tour is not the person we think he is by his media presence from your experience?
Man, that's a crazy question. I
know, but you set that up.
I have no idea. All I can tell you is that it's like anything. It's like the bell curve. You get the good, bad, and the ugly. You see everything on tour, and you get a wide range of personalities. And some you just obviously get along with better, and you can have a common understanding and a common friendship, nice friendship. And others, it's just like, okay, I don't really play my best with this guy. He drives me crazy or this or that. So.
Well, you had some pretty remarkable years. You've also, let alone talking to PGA Tour players, that's rare. But talking to a PGA Tour winner, somebody who's won on the tour, that grinds my saw. Does.
Well,
that's fascinating to me. I mean, how do you get there? I mean, there's so many people that come up and maybe get one win in the tour, if they can make it to the tour and they can grind through the tour. But what separates the winners from the almost winners?
Well, the one thing that I think any successful tour pro has is the ability to keep a good perspective and have a vision for where they want to go. And if you have a good vision of where you want, what you want to achieve and where you want to go, you've got a much greater chance to overcome all the obstacles and disappointments so that they don't set you back so far. And so, for instance, when I started the tour, I played two rounds with Bobby Clampett. I think it was in '83 or whatever, when he led the British Open by about like 12 shots. And I thought to myself, we played Troon, which is the hardest golf course in the world. And he drove it to the top of the hill. He had a 2-iron 10 feet from the only flat lie in the fairway. And I was depressed for 3 months after playing with him. He shot like 66, 67, and I shot like 73, 75 or something like that. And I played as good as I can play. And I'm thinking, I'm in the wrong business. I've dedicated my life to this. And this kid just played circles around me. And literally, I mean, he fell apart in the tournament, but I thought, wow, I just felt like I thought I was really good. You know, I think it was Answer, the guy from Mexico, said that Roy McIlroy did the same thing. It was a cold, brisk morning, and he was hitting he was on the range next to Roy McIlroy, and McIlroy was hitting a 5-iron like 208, you know, into a breeze, and it was chilly, and he thought he missed the next 9 cuts. He was so depressed about his game, and he was trying to make improvements and make changes. And so psychologically, it's a big thing to trust yourself and really have confidence in what you're doing, irregardless of what the proficiency level actually might be. You can actually rise above any deficiencies that you have by good preparation and good mental skills. So there was a guy on tour. He was a miracle worker. His name was Lee Porter. He stayed on the tour for 10 years. And when I'd play with him, I'd say, Lee, you're a miracle worker, man, because it looked like he had a real, you know, odd swing. It had lots of moving parts, and it looked like his ball didn't sound great. It looked like he just didn't hit the ball. I would think, man, he got to feel terrible hitting some of these shots, you know. But yet he stayed out there 10 years and had a good career. And Lee is a very smart guy and has done really well with his skills. And but I always respect guys that can use their skills and maximize their abilities with and really excel with what they have. I mean, that's a real gift. If you come out there like a Fred Couples or Tiger Woods or Jack Nicklaus, you know, it's pretty easy for them by most, or Bruce Litsky, it's pretty easy for them by most standards. But most people, they really have to think about it and really organize their thoughts well and have a good plan and a good vision of how to get better and how to compete well. So that's the beauty of it. I actually love that part of it. I miss that part of the game. And I think that's why I've enjoyed teaching so much. It takes me back to where I can actually help young people learn, and I can teach them things that I wish I would have had or wish I would have been taught when I was younger. I would learn it later in life. And so that's why I've actually enjoyed, you know, I've gotten involved with teaching over the last 4 or 5 years, and it's been really rewarding. So.
Yeah, and we're going to talk a lot about your teaching later on in the interview, but you're throwing out stuff that it just like, I can't write fast enough because I want to ask questions about it. But let's go back for a second here. It sounds to me as if you were saying it takes a level of maturity to succeed, to keep you're talking about getting depressed, right? But yet you have these young guns that keep coming up and have tremendous success. You know, look at Bryson and Morikawa and, you know, these kids coming out of college. Maybe, you know, it's good that they don't have huge crowds following them and making them feel the pressure because they're used to playing in tournaments with nobody around. But where do they find this mental maturity? How do they develop that at such a young age to be able to grind it out and not get depressed?
Here's the big difference in when I grew up, or Curtis Strange, Jay Haas, and guys of my era. I mean, I came out of school. I qualified for the tour. I finished second in the tour qualifying to a guy named John Fote. John Fote won his first 2 tournaments right out of the box. You know, I got to Phoenix, and there were 4 courses with 150 players with one person at each course. We played in a 35-mile-an-hour wind. I played at Pinnacle Peak. I mean, I played in Dallas. We played 50-mile-an-hour winds. I have never seen how tough it was to beat. You know, we had literally hundreds of guys trying to qualify for few spots on tour. There were 3 or 4 spots. And I got into a tournament in Greensboro in March on a sponsor's exemption, but I didn't make a qualifier and a cut really till the Western Open in July. I finished 15th in the tournament, or 14th, right in there, and I made less than $1,500. And I actually played pretty well to the end of the year, and I failed keeping my card, if my memory serves me well, by less than $90, and I didn't even make $7,500. So we didn't play for the money. But if you look at like Curtis Strange was he was the best player coming out of college. I think he might have won NCAA, the U.S. Amateur. He won a bunch of tournaments. He was a great player. And it took him 4 years to get on tour. And he was traveling all over Europe and Asia trying to make a living. And so you get knocked down to the bottom and you have to build your confidence back. Whereas if you take Curtis Strange in today's, market where they have, if they miss the qualifier, they can go to the Nationwide Tour or whatever, the Korn Ferry Tour now, and they can, finish top 25 and they're on the tour. That's the best thing going. And so if we missed a qualifier or failed to qualify, we were playing mini tours, and mostly the guys were going to Europe. And that's a big school of hard knocks. We had players playing in Japan for 4 or 5 years before they could get back to the U.S. So it's a different game. And, but I think it's better because the kids can keep their confidence. Like you take a Matthew Wolff, and he's very unrefined in like his pitching game and some of the areas. But, if you give him a moment to feel his swing and to make adjustments, he's a magician. And yet, I think that they really are ahead of the game because they don't lose their confidence like we did. Where I had guys that should have been playing the tour, but they just got knocked down. They said, Chip, I can't take it. 4 or 5 of them just said, I'll see you later. It was just too there wasn't enough money, and it was just challenging. There are other ways to make a living, so you really had to have a passion for it and a love for it. You never look back. That was the thing. And you learn to focus on what your skills are, and your skills will carry you. Your strengths carry you, and you capitalize on your strengths. And so it's I always thought that was the best part of the game. It took me 5 to 7 years to really feel like, hey, I've got this. I can do this. I belong here, and I'm gonna really make a living here. So
amazing.
It helps you grow up. So I think there is maturity involved with that.
Yeah, absolutely. We're talking to former PGA Tour winner Chip Beck, and we'll be back right after this. Chip, it's interesting that you brought up depression and being depressed, because I'm struggling right now with my game. I'm taking a couple months off, and usually I know that there's many people in the United States, especially that have to take 4 or 5 months off because of winter and other parts. But I live in California, and I can play 12 months a year. I mean, it's playable today. You live in Florida. You can play 12 months a year. But I just I need a break. I'm not enjoying myself. It really what it was. I just was not enjoying myself out on the golf course.
Your expectations are way too high. I mean, I have friends now that tell me, they say, Chip, I hate playing. I can't hit shots I used to hit. I don't feel as good as I used to. I don't do the things I used to. And I said, well, welcome to the real world, because the reality is, I look for the quality of shots that I hit. And if I hit a couple, I'm really happy. And if and I look for the enjoyment of the game and what the game, the social aspects and all the good parts of the game. And so I don't really have to perform as much. And, I don't worry about it. I just accept it and try to do the best with what I have and where I am right now. And I really enjoy that part of it. There's no pressure on me to play. And it's the first time in my life that I haven't felt the desire to. When I quit on the Champions Tour after qualifying for 10 years and going through that cycle, I was thinking, wow, it took me about a year and a half to get over. I'd wake up in the middle of the night and say, I've got to go practice. I got to do this. So it's been kind of nice to, I think every age has its benefits, and being 64 right now, I've really enjoyed it. And I think that my life is very rich and full right now because I'm doing things that I've never been able to do,
Like what?
Well, I've been taking long walks, and I listen to audiobooks, and I've just found it fascinating. There's so much. I'm like catching up on the world that I left behind when I was trying to earn my way on the tour, and it took so much of my energy and so much of my devotion. There are musicians that I'm coming to find out that I didn't know anything about them and where they lived or what they did. And so I've enjoyed like catching up. It's like going back and seeing what the 80s and 90s were all about.
Oh my, I can't believe you're saying this. You say, are you originally from
North Carolina? North
Carolina, but you spent time in Chicago?
I lived there 30 years.
And the only reason you're going to love this. In 1986, I got a chance to interview Ernie Banks. And as a Chicago kid, you would get that, right? And
let's play too.
Amazing. Yeah, hey, it's a beautiful day for baseball. Let's play too. And now let's play 36. But he told me on that day that I'm out of baseball now and I'm learning about the things that I missed when I was playing. And he was studying history. He says, I was on the ball field in 1968. Do you know what was going on in Chicago in 1968? It's like, yeah, I do remember that, Ernie. Yeah. And so it's amazing that you said the same thing, is that I'm learning. I was so focused on my craft in those years that I didn't know what else was going on around the world. And you're blessed that you can now look back and take that opportunity to learn. That's great.
Yeah, it really is a wonderful time in my life that way. I remember meeting Ernie Banks because he worked with Jim Suddy at Cog Hill. And I'm a baseball fan, just, on the periphery, so to speak. I like keeping up with what's going on, and I like the World Series and things like that. And I like meeting the players like a Johnny Bench or whoever it might be. I played golf with Hershiser. I thought that was pretty cool because he hit it a country mile. And so I've met a lot of these players, and I like to find and see what they're all about. And I like the personal side of that. But Ernie Banks was really into golf, and he was a very good golfer as well. So a lot of the baseball players, they really enjoy it because they can, kind of reinvent themselves. Like he was saying, studying history, doing all the other things. So like for me, I've enjoyed, like I've got a good buddy of mine teaching me fly fishing, and fly fishing is so, I used to love to fish when I was 10 years old before I started playing golf. And I'd go out with some of my friends. And I remember where we used to go. And some of those lakes aren't there anymore. But my buddy, we went fly fishing up on the coast of Florida in the mangroves. And to watch him throw that fly rod, it was impressive. And catching snook, because Paul Azinger loves fishing probably more than anything he does in life. And he said, Chip, the snook is the best fish to catch. And so I caught one, like last week, and I'm like, it's so much fun. But you couldn't get out of the mangroves in Florida with breadcrumbs. I could get lost there for weeks because it's a serpentine trail and everything looks the same. But it's beautiful to be in the mangroves, and I love being outside. And so it's just like, I'm looking forward when I go to North Carolina to go into the woods and just watch some of my brother and some of my cousins and some of my friends just to watch the deer. They go deer hunting up there, and they love the hunting part. I'm not much of a killer, but I like watching and being in nature. I love that part of it. So anyways, I'm doing things I've never had a chance to do. It's been wonderful.
And that's the thing about golf that I absolutely love, and that's being outdoors and taking the walk and just, getting to separate from that. But you're absolutely right. My expectations were out of control. I was playing competitively with a friend who I don't like playing competitively like that. I like playing just like, it's like, okay, let's go play. And at the end, we'll figure out who had the least amount of strokes instead of every hole going, I got you that one. It's like, my mind exploded and I couldn't do it. Plus the fact that there was so much going on in the world, in the country, in our lives all around the same time, that it was just one thing too many, the competition part. And I'm like,
yeah,
okay, I just got to step away. But I understand the expectations part. I've been talking to so many teachers over the years. I get not to have expectations. So I don't know why it took over me the way it did.
Well, it is nice to just walk, and realizing that walking is probably the best part of the game. And we used to call it, you're just playing old man par. And old man par is pretty tough to beat. And so from the time I was a little kid, I used to think about that. This guy named Jack Parks, who graduated from the University of Georgia in 3 years with honor, he was the first guy to actually do that. And he was a great person. And he was 65 when he'd take me to tournaments. And he'd say, Chip, you're going to play old man par today. Here's how you beat old man par. I mean, I loved it. So he'd tell me stories. And
great.
He took me to the Masters. I had a great time with Jack Parks. And so those were great memories. And even he'd take me going down the Santee River down in South Carolina. And Grantland Rice had two crazy brothers that lived at the end of an old dirt road. And the country road ran out, and there was an old house. And he had a hunchback brother and another brother that lived in this old dilapidated house. And we pulled in there, and lo and behold, this guy runs out. I see the door slide. It like creaks, and then he runs out. He darts behind the car, darts behind the other, jumps in his truck. I said, Jack, we better get out of here. I backed that thing up and ran down that road, and that guy was coming neck and neck with his truck right next to me. I was scared to death. But we had a lot of fun going to Dothan, Alabama, cutting through some of these towns. He really knew a lot of colloquial history, and he was the most enjoyable person to be with. When I lost to Scott Hoke in the state high school in a sudden death playoff, when I was a sophomore at the time, and I got home that night and found out that Jack Parks had died. I thought, God, that was a terrible day. I'll never forget it. Because I used to tell myself, I can't wait till I'm 65. I'm going to be just like Jack Parks. So,
and his memory is a blessing. We're going to take another time out. Now we've fallen in love with you, Chip, at getting to know you now, but now we want to hear a little more about your history, and we'll do that when we come back after this. Chip, tell me, what years did you play on the PGA Tour? I'm going to start digging into your career here because you have some pretty substantial milestones, but let's talk about the years you were in the PGA Tour.
Well, I graduated from college summer of 78 and went down and qualified. And my first year was January of 79. And I was thrilled to be there because I had a friend that didn't qualify and he had to go to Europe. And man, he was telling me stories about how he played in Bangladesh, and getting sick. And it was just, they pay him in cash. He thought he was going to get robbed. He said, it was a nightmare. And he was a street kid too. So I could have never survived. Wow. So I was really fortunate to get started in 79. Took me 10 years to win though, Fred.
Is that right? It took you 10 years?
It did. I mean, and it's funny. I won in Los Angeles, won that LA Open. And it was probably at the lowest point in my life. And the only thing that I could do at that time, I was thinking, is after I hit a shot, I'm going to think of one good thing, and that's it. And I'm not going to worry. Those two things. I ended up winning the tournament. And I thought to myself, I've played so well for so many years, and I've played so much better and haven't won. But that particular tournament, I remember on the 9th hole, I was losing. I think Jay Haas was about to catch me and some other guys, and I'd given up a lead. And I said, dadgummit, there is no way I'm giving up this lead now. And I hit a shot into 9. And it's like a triple tiered green, and I was on the lower tier, which is where you don't want to be. And the flag was cut to the left on the second tier. And I said, you know what? I'm going to make this putt come hell or high water. And I focused on making that putt. I rolled that putt right in. And then I told myself I'm going to knock it right on the front of this green. The flag was right on the front. And I took my driver and knocked it right on the front. I was 10 feet from the flag, chipped up, made my birdie. Then I got in on the next hole, and I said, dadgummit, I'm going to birdie this hole too. And I hit my wedge in there about 3 feet, and I made that putt. And it's all she wrote. But it was a mindset as much as anything. I was so sick and tired of getting beaten. And I was fed up with beating myself is what it was, from all the worry, the anxiety, trying too hard, trying to be too perfect. And I think those are some of the things that made it hard on me getting started and having to build my confidence back up, because I felt like I was destined to play professional golf. I never thought I would do anything else. I just felt I'd had a good career. I won, some good tournaments in college. And I just was determined to play golf. I wanted it, And it was really funny because L.B. Floyd, when I lost my sponsorship in Fayetteville, North Carolina, L.B. Floyd said, hey, Chip, come play Cypress. I can help you, and I'll give you a place to play. And I said, gosh, that's really nice of you, Mr. Floyd. He started teaching me. I finished 29th and 30th on the money list. I was introduced to Ray Floyd. And Ray was really nice to me. And, L.B. Floyd was a sergeant in the Army, and he had a real colorful language. And my dad was he was a country boy from the mountains of North Carolina, but a real good, I don't know how just the most dependable and reliable person you could ever imagine. And he never cussed. He controlled himself so well. I think
honorable.
He'd seen it. Yeah, very honorable guy. I mean, he filled up the church when he passed away, But LB, he would say, Chip, I can take a horse to water, but GD, can you please drink? He just cussed me out. And I was like scared to death of him. So my mother, I just, it was really interesting because in 1967, the year I took up golf, Ray Floyd invited Jack Nicklaus to come in and play for the grand opening of this golf course that Ray Floyd was involved. His dad was 30% owner of. But it was interesting because Nicklaus was like 27 years old, had won 7 majors and like 7 tournaments. He was a world beater, but he didn't have his 5 years in on the PGA of America to play the Ryder Cup. He didn't have enough time. And he came and I remember following Nicklaus and Floyd, and I remember going into the locker room, following them. And heck, 40 years later, it was like my mother called me and said, hey, Chip, L.B. Floyd's not doing well. You need to come pay your last respects. Well, I drove over to Cypress where his home is, and Ray had a home next to him. But anyways, I went in there. As I was getting to his home, he was coming out in a wheelchair, and he looked up and he said, Chip, the greatest day of my life was when you and Raymond finished 1-2 in the U.S. Open. That was 1986 at Shinnecock. I shot 65 on on the last day. Lanny shot 65. We tied for second, but I shot 30 on the back nine. It was the lowest 9 holes in U.S. Open history. I thought I had a great chance of winning it. And I missed a short putt on the last hole from the upside, 3 or 4 feet. And anyways, it was disappointing, but yet I remembered feeling so good with him telling me that. And he passed very shortly thereafter, like within a few days, LB. But I remember going in that locker room, and I remembered the smell from the time I was 10 years old. And it just hit me. It's like, gosh, it hadn't changed at all. And I remember walking in those doors, following Nicklaus and Floyd. Raymond gave me 30 brand new Wilson Staff golf balls. It was a life-changing experience. I said, that's what I want to do. And I never looked back. So that's how powerful it is when you remember the smells and the images that you had in your mind from that time. I was 10. And so they were, Raymond Floyd being the first captain of the Ryder Cup team when I qualified in 89 after my good year in 88. And I'll never forget, he said, hey, Zinger and Beck, you guys have qualified for this team. I'm putting you in, play hard. I'm counting on you. That boy knew how to motivate Zinger and I. And I loved Raymond Floyd, man. He was so good to me. And it was funny, after meeting him, I'd be like the only guy of my age at his parties, and everybody in golf was at his parties down at, where in Miami, where he'd have his every year at the rally, he'd throw a party, and I'd be like the only guy there, and they'd have all the mucky mucks, Nicklaus would be there, and all the Turkinian and anybody that was anybody in golf was there, but my brother and I would go. My brother caddied for me at the time. We just had a great time. And I felt so honored to get to know Raymond and Jack, through golf that way. So I was very fortunate, and I think that's one of the great things about golf in my generation. We didn't make the money. But heck, when I was in my 20s, I was playing with Trevino and Nicklaus and Floyd. And I even got a couple of things going with Peter Jacobson. They invited me to play in a couple of shootouts with Arnold Palmer. But he was 30 years but older than me, but 20 years was really good. And so I played with George Archer, and I even played with Sam Snead. In 1979, my first year on tour, I'll never forget, I'm playing Quad Cities. And I tee off the first hole, and Sam's watching me. The tee was elevated. He hits me. He said, damn it, son. He was real colorful, He said, keep the ball in your stance. You can't play golf from there.
Oh, wow.
I said, Mr. Snead, what do you mean? He said, son, you got the ball outside your left foot. You can't play golf from there. But, I mean, that's the kind of thing that you'd learn.
Did that change? Did you?
I asked him the whole way around, Sam, what are you doing here? But see, he was in his 50s or 60s right at that time. He shot his age that week. I can't remember the score he shot, but it was 60 something, probably. Wow. And but meeting and playing with Sam Snead, I loved it. I mean, I was a kid. I was 21 years old playing with Sam Snead, and I actually got to play in some other events with him. But I got to know J.C. Snead through my friend Tim Simpson. And these guys, I remember J.C. showing me, he said, Chip, get over here, man. You got to learn to hit this 2-iron. You can't keep the ball down. And then I would play with Chi-Chi, and first day I played with him, he said, Chip, he'd slap me. He said, son, you're the worst wedge player I've ever seen. We played this little course up there in Hartford, Connecticut called Weathersfield. It was a real short pitch and putt golf course, a wedge, just driver's 9-iron. And he said, get over here, son, put that ball back in your stance and chop down on it. At least you'll get it on the green. But you learn from those guys. But see, I look at some of the young kids today, and I see Ricky Fowler, he's turning that face wide open, and he's leaving it in the bunker, and he's losing the 3 majors, where it looks like, I mean, he'll leave it short and chip it in, double chip on a hole. And it's like, man, this kid is so good. He should be winning these tournaments. But the technique is faulty in some ways. And it's the refinement of little things that I learned from the older guys. And so, if I were playing with Ricky Fowler, I'd say, Ricky, you got to play like Seve. I never saw Seve leave it in a bunker or leave it short. Even like the boy from Australia, he won the TPC, and he makes 2 doubles on like 16. He doubles it. He married a girl from Columbus, Ohio. I can't remember her name. And real nice guy, Jason Day, yeah. And
lucky guess.
He makes 2 doubles, because his chipping is not as refined as it could be, and he's afraid of knocking it in the water. And Seve would just take the whole the grass and the ball, he'd throw it up higher, come down soft. He would never be afraid of dropping it in the water past the flag, and so. You see, these kids are gifted, but what they miss, I think, is the ability to play with the older guys that have a lot of experience, especially playing on courses that demand, a little bit more expertise sometimes to get the ball up quicker and higher. And, so you learn that from the School of Hard Knocks. Sometimes I feel, like I would have enjoyed playing today because it's easier in some ways, but yet the reality was I think I would never trade my generation. I remember meeting Tommy Bolt and say, Chip, how old are you, son? And he'd say, you need to start winning. You're 30 years old now. You only have so many more years to do this and that. You got to get your major under your belt. I mean, these boys didn't hold their punches, and they knew what they were talking about. So that's the experience that, I could go on and on about stories from George Archer winning in his 40s, and I'm playing golf with him. It's like, and I didn't know he was illiterate. He was the nicest guy, So from Gilroy, California, down south of where you are, but George Archer was a real gentleman, and he was illiterate, and I didn't know that. I was friends with him. And I remember playing the Masters. He had his daughter who was a minister caddying for him. And it's funny because I never saw George give a speech, and I never saw him in front of groups of people. And so when I found that after he passed, because I knew his wife and his family, and I always loved him, and I thought, wow, that's just it's amazing how much suffering he must have had to not know how to read and write. And converse with people with confidence, and winning the Masters like that. I remember playing a practice round with him, and he said, Chip, when I won this in 69, we're walking off the 8th green. He said, the tee was right here. He said, look how much further back we go now. I said, gosh, it's amazing, isn't it? And it's going back 100 yards back then. It's now 150 yards further back. So you learn a lot from these guys, and I loved my friendships on tour and the people that I met, and so that's the part that I think I miss the most.
Oh, but you were so blessed to have that in your life. Oh my God! And you said you could just tell stories forever. No one here is stopping you, buddy. All right, listen, we're going to take another break here to hear about what's going to be on our other podcast, Golf Smarter Mulligans, coming up this week. Back right after that. As you're aware, a lot of our episodes are based on your suggestions, and it's been that way since we started. Well, this week on Golf Smarter Mulligans, we go back to episode 184 from 2009 and a suggestion from listener Jimmy Masters, who thought that his brother, PGA certified teaching instructor Tommy Masters, would be a great fit for us. Here's a taste.
Most amateurs that I see, when you ask them to hit a shot, they walk in and they align their body first. So first and foremost, I'm a huge advocate of when you walk in, setting the golf club in first to your intended target area and picking a spot maybe just in front of your ball, a divot, piece of grass, is a wonderful way to work on aiming your club face properly. And then taking your stance and getting your body relatively square and in line with that. Again, if it's somebody who tends to shape the ball a certain way, slice and hook, well then that aim may change a little bit more to the right or left. But in general, if you can get to where you're aiming the club face properly to your intended target, then simply just getting your feet and hips and shoulders in a square or aligned position to where the club face is, you're going to be in business.
That's episode 87 of Golf Smarter Mulligans featuring Tommy Masters. What a great name for a golf instructor, isn't it? Anyway, Tommy is answering listener questions from an episode that has never been available publicly since it was originally one of our members-only episodes. It's being released this Friday. Both Golf Smarter and Golf Smarter Mulligans are free and available wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Please subscribe. And when you do, you'll be notified immediately when a brand new episode of either has been downloaded to your favorite podcast app. I don't even know. Okay, so I really don't know where to go because you have so many things that you're talking about that I just want to pursue. You've got amazing stories. Thank you so much for sharing those with us.
You're so nice.
Oh no, you being incredibly gracious. Thank you. So you won 4 times on the PGA Tour?
Won 4 times.
Okay.
Finished second 22 times.
But you had a round of golf that's for the ages. Give us details on that one.
Yes.
For the ages.
Are we filming now, Fred? Or are we?
We're going, man. We're on. I got to hear this story. This one's
good for you, Fred.
Talk about shooting your age, huh? Okay, so
shooting 59 truly was one of the life experiences where I think everybody has them in their lives where, gosh, you go to sleep that night and you think, wow, everything went my way. What in the world happened? It was like a miracle. You know, you transcend all the anxiety and worry and fear, and it flows. And then what came from that, first off, I'll never forget Jim Cook, who was the tournament director at the time, and he was taking me around after the round, and he said, Chip, man, this is the most exciting thing I've ever seen. He said, our tournament's going global now. Everybody in the world's going to see this and see that you shot 59 at our tournament. And the nice thing about it was Jaime Diaz in 1990 at the tour banquets, he predicted that I would actually shoot the 59. And I was sitting there with Eric Hilton. He was sitting to my right. My wife was sitting to my left. And he said, hey, Chip, have you heard we're going to give $1 million to the first guy that shoots 59 this year? And my wife heard him kind of tap me over the table and said, hey, Chip, you're going to get that. And Eric heard it. And I said, Eric, one thing I know is when you put up $1 million, I saw Don Pooley make a hole-in-one at Bay Hill with a 1-iron. And there wasn't probably 2 feet that he could land it in and actually give it a chance to go in the hole. That was when, a 1-iron was going 210 yards into the wind. That was it was a impossible thing to happen. 1 in a million shot, and it went in. So I knew it could happen. And one of the nice things about it, the tour had set up, where half the money was going to a charity. And I was able to designate it going to the Evans Scholar Foundation in Chicago. And heck, we've put about 50 kids through college with it so far. And that's been the nicest experience in my life. Plus, I was just new to Chicago, and I got to meet a lot of the mucky mucks around Chicago. And I'll never forget Bert Getz. He called me, and he said, Chip, I played golf with his son, and he followed me playing in Phoenix that year. They have a lot of real estate in Phoenix. And he said, Chip, I really want you to be a member of my club. And I said, I would love to be a member of your club, Bert, but I don't think I can afford to be a member of your club. And he said, no, I want you to just be a member. I'm not going, no initiation, no dues, nothing. He said, I just want you to be a member and pay whatever you use. And I said, gosh, that's the greatest honor I think I've ever received. And I'm still a member and enjoy it. And the Getz family is just, they've been great to me. And so that, that's one of the things that came out of it. But just the longevity of the goodness that came from that day was really an exciting time for me. Oh,
I bet. Well, wait a minute. What happened to the $1 million? Did you win it?
I did win it. I shot 59, and the hardest part about it is
the purses were not $1 million in those days. I got to believe that the years you were playing, getting $1 million purse was.
Well, Andrew McGee won the tournament that week in Las Vegas, and he won $650,000, and that was our biggest tournament. And so $1 million, that last putt, I was nervous over. I can tell you that. I was shaking. But I think what helped me do it was
isn't Andrew McGee the guy who got the hole-in-one on a par 4 because it hit somebody's putter?
Yeah, Tom Byron.
I played with him. I played with him. A member in a celebrity tournament thing.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, when I made the hole-in-one, Kurt Byram, he said, he ran down, he said, Chip, we got it all on film. It was on ESPN. And He said, it was amazing. It stayed in. It was going so fast. It was 316 yards. And Michael Campbell said, by George, Chip, perfect shot. And I think it's going to go in. It hit the flag and went in. And a couple of funny stories, but Kurt said, we got it all on TV. But I'll never forget my son, John. He said, Dad, you made Sports Center. You made the top 10 for the week, And that was a big thing.
Having your kid acknowledge that you did something great.
Yeah, he was young at the time. And so that was kind of fun. And then the thing is, in 1979, I played Pinehurst, and I made a hole-in-one on the 17th hole, and I threw the ball to my dad. And then a couple of years later, I made it at Greensboro, and my dad was there. My dad followed me maybe twice in his life, and he just happened to have those balls. And so he also said, he said, Chip, I've got the 1 and the 4. Why don't you make the 2 and the 3? So I said, all right. So every time I went to par 3, I'd put the 2 up, and I'd make the 2, and then I'd put the 3 up, and I made the 3. So he's got all the balls. But then when I made the hole-in-one on the par 4, the kids were scrambling for that ball, and I said, I really was being selfish. I said, well, I really want to keep that ball. I said, I've played 47 years and never seen anything like this. And I'd always heard about, how the ball went on the railroad tracks, hit the train. And all these crazy stories about how people make a hole-in-one on a par 4. You think it's impossible. And pretty near is. There had only been 2 in the history of the tour, So but I said, I'm giving it to my dad. And the press picked it up and put it in the press. And my dad read it, and he called me. Chip, he said, it meant so much for you wanting to give me that ball. And I said, oh, gosh, Dad, if you really knew what I was thinking, I'm a heel, But my mother has that ball in her cabinet. And I thought, I'm glad my dad, it meant so much to my dad. That was a great thing that happened from that. So, yeah, golf brings a lot of interesting things that can happen to you.
Absolutely. Well, it happened to you. Maybe not.
Yeah, it happens to everybody that plays. I remember my mother she was a good putter. And I played her when I was like 12, and I was playing every day. And I gave her a shot a hole. And she'd make all these 30-footers. And she beat me. And I said, Mom, I'll never give a person a shot a hole for as long as I live. Because I said, I'm playing so good, playing so much, and you're beating me. I said, this is terrible. So we laugh about it, but she still remembers how good a putter she was, and she's 89 years old.
Oh,
so
amazing. Well, I want to go back to the 59 for a second. You're in the kitchen right now, right?
Yeah, my wife's cooking dinner. You can probably hear all the noise.
Yeah, I can. It's like we're all getting hungry listening to this.
Yeah, sorry.
No, that's okay.
Doing a Hello Fresh tonight, which is exciting.
Do what you got to do. But you're 59. You mentioned that night, it kind of dawned on you what you did, that you were able to, because, whenever anybody walks off the court or the course or the field after any amazing or winning thing, there's a reporter sticking a microphone in their face going, so how do you feel about that? And it's like, I don't know. I just did it. Wait, I get you, right? So you got the opportunity to sit back and reflect on it. But
what's funny? One of the funny things.
I also want to know what happened during the round, but let's talk about.
Well, one of the funny things that happened, probably 10 years after the round, he said, hey, Chip, do you remember how you went to the range after you shot 59 and you're in line to get your golf balls. We had to pay for golf balls when I was playing the tour. And he said, I was standing right behind you. And I told the guy collecting the money, he said, you're going to charge Chip Beck $6 for these balls. And he just shot 59 and won $1 million. He said, why don't you give him some free balls? He said, that was me. I said, I do remember that because that was kind of funny.
Who said that to you?
Huh?
Who was it that said that?
Just a guy that I ran into him 10 years after that moment.
So funny.
I used to know his name, but it's funny, all the people that I played with that day, like Rudy Illich from Chicago, he has passed away. I met his son, but they're no longer around anymore, so it's been a long time ago. But the 59 was pretty fascinating, and you do have a sense of, wow, that was remarkable that it actually happened because I hadn't seen the golf course. And I remembered my caddy the night before with John Cook's caddy and Dick Mass. They were talking about how, hey, this course, you can hit the par fives and there's some wedge holes on the par fours. This you can shoot 59 on. And I'll never forget, my wife said, after the round, she said, Chip, I bit my tongue to not say, go shoot the 59. Good luck. She said, I didn't say a word. And I just said, have fun today. And heck, when I made the turn, this marshal was sitting there. He said, hey, Chip, that was the best 9 by 2 shots. Keep it up and you'll shoot the 59. Well, heck, making the turn, that was the hardest birdie I made. So fortunately, I birdied 10, 11, 12. That got me going. And it was a wedge on 10, which really made a difference. And, but yeah, you're so thankful when anything good happens because there's so many things that can go wrong. I remember Larry Mize saying, Chip, I shot 61. I thought I had you. I thought I was going to get there first. I was first out. So it's funny what you remember from those days, but that was a pretty miraculous round of golf for sure.
Absolutely.
I think, and Fred, you know what really happened? I'd played the Ryder Cup.
Yeah. And
we played Kiowa, and the greens, it was so windy and the greens were so big. And, it was a Pete Dye, brand new course. The ball was breaking. So I felt like I had 30 footers all week and never made a putt. It was like, wow, it's hard to make putts there. And so that particular day, I hit my drive in the right rough. I fatted a 7-iron on the front of the green. And I had this 60-footer that when I hit it, I looked at it and said, wow, it's right in the middle of the cup. You know how when you're looking straight up the hill? And I said, at 20 feet, wow, that thing's right in the middle. 10 feet, oh, man. And then I said, gosh, it's going right in the middle of the cup. And bam, it went right in the middle. And I think the whole cup looked like a waste basket. It was so big, and I made every putt that day. So it's quite amazing. And one thing that I remembered when I was actually I could hardly break 80 at the time. I was missing a lot of cuts, and I had a dream of how I got to the 17th tee, and it was a par 3, and I always played a cut at the time, and the wind started kicking really hard from right to left, 20 miles an hour, and I backed off, and I told my caddy, Dave Woozley, I said, Dave, I think I need to 1-2 hop it on the right fringe to keep it underneath the hole. He said, yeah. So I took my 5-iron and hit it 1-2, kept it under the hole. And sure enough, it's one of those greens that was 2-tiered, and the flag was just underneath the tier. If I'd have gone left and stuck to my plan, I'd have had a 10, 15 footer that breaks 3 and 4 feet. I know I'd have never made the putt. As it was, I had a 10 footer that broke probably 6, 7 inches. Curved it right in there. And then on the last hole, I was in the fairway, and I'm thinking, gosh, I remembered seeing the shot, and I thought the ball's sitting down a little bit, and it was like 153 to the flag, which is usually a 7-iron. I said, but the ball's sitting down. If I clip it really good, I can get more spin on it. I probably knock it in the cup. I need to get this ball in the hole because I don't know if I can keep making all these putts, because at that time we're playing with metal spikes, and in an arid climate, when you kick up a spike mark or a piece of grass, there was a piece of dirt on it, and it would be like little landmines and knock your ball all over the place. So I said, go in, ball, when I hit that 8-iron. And when I remember hitting it and seeing the spin on the ball and thinking, God, that's perfect. Go in. And I got up there and it was above the hole about 3 or 4 feet. And I had 2 spike marks in my line. And I thought, okay, after my team says, Chip, what do you want us to do? I said, well, just finish out and don't worry, just relax. And they were gone. They picked up, they were gone. So I went to the side of the green and I said, just settle down and see if you can roll this putt really well. Roll it to where it hits the first spike mark, kicks it right, hits the second spike mark on the right side and goes in the right side of the cup. So I said, let's roll it and stay steady. And so I could see the ball. I hit it. It rolled. It hit the first spike mark. Boom. Hit the next. Boom. Went in the right side. I was so relieved. Man, I got $1 million. And I'm thinking, man. But I was thinking, the thing that's interesting about it, you always play your golf in your imagination. You don't play mechanics. You don't play. You see pictures. And those pictures came so clearly to me. And I think that's why I was playing so well at the time. I could visualize it. And so that was a part that I think helped me, get out of that slump and start playing better and play pretty well on the Champions Tour and enjoy the game again. So that was great.
On your last putt, did you know you needed one putt to to get the 59? How long was that putt, and what were you feeling at that time?
Well, I knew it was a big putt. My caddy knew he was going to get about 100,000 from it, so he was going to get 10% on that. So,
how long was the putt?
Every bit of 3 feet.
Wow!
But it's interesting because I think, having some obstacles there, it actually made me focus and settle down. Even though I was nervous, my knees were a little bit wobbly. I'd never made a putt for $1 million. And it's pretty common now. But I'll tell you how much $1 million was for us. In 1988, I led the money list. I'd won 2 tournaments. And anyways, the last week it was the Tour Championship, and they had the Nabisco Challenge. This was 1988. Curtis Strange was 9th on the money list. He made $650,000 from the Nabisco Challenge after winning. He finished first. And he won $650,000, and I finished like 30th or something, and I got a bonus, which was fantastic, but it wasn't $650,000. But he goes from 9th to first place by less than $90,000, and he was the first guy to win $1 million on tour. So that's how much $1 million was, and it wasn't too many years before there where Johnny Miller in '74 won 7 times and made $240,000. So we didn't play for really the money. We played because of the love of the game and the competition, and it was such a good way of life. That's what the camaraderie and the fun of it was just fantastic.
If you're playing for the money, you're going to get yourself in trouble. Chip, one of the things that we hear over and over again from teachers of all different levels, right? Great teachers, good teachers, amazing teachers, is don't look at your scorecard. It's the kiss of death. If you're sitting there going, all I need to do is par these last 2 holes and I can give me a number, right? And 60, 70, 80, 90. And then you're putting the pressure on yourself. But you have told me multiple times that you've had times in your career you've had dadgummit moments where you're like, I have to do this. I got to do this. You pressure yourself into do it, and you succeeded. Wow, how'd you do that? Where's the difference there? How do amateurs get to pull that off?
Well, I think, the main thing when you play golf, and one of the great things about it, it takes your mind off of all your problems and your worries and your anxiety. And, I remember Lee Trevino always said, hey, Chip, it's a lot harder when you're playing for $10 and you got $5 in your pocket. He said, but when I'm winning a tournament, it's all house money. And he's right. So I would just hang in there, and I would be mentally tough so that I could stay in the game. I mean, for me, I would know that 3rd place by myself I could get $30,000. That's a pretty good point. If you fail to, to win the tournament. You still hang in there because there's still a lot of opportunity to make your week worth something, and you suffer so much with all the qualifying and trying to make a living. But yeah, you have to focus on what you want to accomplish, not the things that might go wrong. It's like a one pointed intention with total exclusion of all obstacles. You have to have that kind of focus. And fortunately for me, I was able to do that. And my personality was that way. I could focus on an object and on a goal and accomplish it. But you do have to have that one pointed intention with no worries about obstacles. I can tell you that. If you're worrying about where you might miss it or where this might go, you're in trouble playing golf.
Yeah, well, because you're playing in the future and you're not being present.
Right.
No, whoa. I'm going to cut Chip off right there for a couple of reasons. I know this is out of the ordinary, but I've got a method to my madness. Now, in the final 16 minutes of this interview, Chip and I discussed this fabulous new app for iOS and Android called Perfect Motion. It's an artificial intelligence generated swing improvement platform that helps you quickly develop proper body motion with every club. This app is so good, it's scary good, right? Plus, in this conversation, Chip makes an exclusive offer for the Golf Smarter community to take lessons with him at a fraction of his normal teaching rate that will be hard for you not to consider. You may turn it down, but you'll definitely think about it. Now, the reason I'm not going to let you hear about it until next week is because tomorrow I'm scheduled to interview the CEO and creator of Perfect Motion, Rich Kosowski, who will give us the full rundown of what makes this app unique among all the others that are trying to grab our attention. So in our next episode, we'll finish up with Chip and then we'll meet Rich. Now, here's a little tease from their website that will assure me you'll be back next week.
2, 1. Set up to putt. Look to target. Look back at ball. Go.
Isn't technology awesome? Hi, I'm Jake Thurm. I've been recognized as one of the best coaches in the country by Golf Digest. I've also worked with the best players in the world and the best technology in the world. And I've found it again. Perfect Motion Golf app, downloadable now at the App Store on your mobile device. You can use any club in the bag. You can putt, you can chip, you can make full swings, and you don't even need to use a golf ball. Let's be honest, 2020 sucked. And right now it's getting a little bit colder and you're trying to figure out how you can come out of this upcoming winter with a golf game that doesn't really suck. Download the Perfect Motion Golf app, select me as your coach, and I will give you everything I got and what I've learned from the best players, the best coaches, and the best technology. Hope that you will, and I look forward to working with you.
Sounds pretty intriguing, doesn't it? Well, I'm going to put Chip on his website also has a video for the Perfect Motion app, and I'll put that on today's blog post, the full video, and then I'll put the links in the show notes so you can go and get it on your own. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, or you just want to rail on me because I cut this interview, I'm happy to hear from you and start the dialogue. So just click on the Hey Fred button at golfsmarter.com.